between the two of them.
The inside of Coates.
Barker gets too heavily involved.
And that's Whitehead and Coates.
I know my destiny. I know my destiny. I know my destiny. I know my destiny.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome along to the VRRC for the third night of racing in the Cammus Simulation GTV3 Championship. We've had 4 races already, 3 different race winners, a pretty tasty looking championship fight already starting to develop, and a week ago at Monza, quite a few surprises on what was a fairly chaotic night, it must be said, and it certainly has mixed up the championship situation quite nicely as we arrive in Turkey at the Istanbul Park circuit. This the host venue for the Turkish Grand Prix for a number of years, of course, and certainly a welcome addition to this GTV3 championship. As usual, Andy McEwen here in the commentary box alongside Jack Oliphant. And Jack, I think I needed that full week just to catch my breath, process everything that happened at Monza. There was plenty to unpack after those two races, and I think it started perhaps to prove our point that this was not going to be an Eric Axelsen walkover, as some people were suggesting after round one. We are in for a pretty interesting championship fight.
We are indeed, yeah. Eric is still top of the championship according to drop scores, of course. So there's, if you're wondering why we're talking, is if it's blown wide open, then you see the championship and Eric's still on top. That's all drop scores. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes' time. But you're absolutely right. There was lots of drama, shall we say, for the front-running drivers at Monza, the likes of Nicky Taylor, Kyle Felvis, Eric Axelsen. The two BMWs are really strong in Joel Lask and Scott Bugden. They were loving it at Monza. They're coming into the fray as well all of a sudden. And then Josh Martin, who's ever the consistent driver. So it is really going to be very interesting indeed to see how we crack on from not only Istanbul, but Kyle Army, Watkins Glen, Fuji Speedway, Suzuka Circuit, and Silverstone, which is the remaining 6 races that we've got after this particular evening. And we can see in the YouTube chat that we're actually going to be missing one driver this evening, which is a bit of a shame. It'll be Kyle Felvis, who I believe is watching from a hotel room on holiday. So it's nice for some, isn't it, Andy?
I'm sure I could find something better to do on a Wednesday night if I was in some far-flung land than sit and listen to us two prattle on for an hour or so. But we welcome their support. Great to have them watching along. And Kyle will be very grateful, I suspect, for the drop score situation. That is how the calendar looks then for the rest of the season. We, as I said, raced a week ago, as you can see, at the high-speed Monza circuit in Italy. And it produced a couple of interesting race results. Race 1 was fairly standard as far as the fact it was a lights to flag win for Joel Lask. He then backed that up with a 3rd place finish in the reversed grid race, a race that was won by Josh Martin. So it was the 2 LB Motorsport BMWs who came out as the top scorer, Scott Bugner having scored a pair of runner-up finishes in the first race behind Lask, the second race behind Josh Martin, and they end up the top 3 scorers on the night. The big news, really, well, there were 2 bits of big news, because 2 of our expected championship contenders, in fact, you could argue 3, found themselves on the wrong side of a couple of stewards' decisions. So we had a disqualification in race 1 for Nicky Taylor, in race 2 for Kyle Felvis, and these are words, Jack, I never thought I'd say, a 10-second time penalty for the Swedish assassin himself, Eric Axelsen, getting himself in trouble in race 1, and that meant that he did not have a high-scoring night.
No, I'll be honest, probably not the best thing to admit going into an evening. I didn't know that all those penalties had been given out. I can understand or I can see where the incidents came from for the first team, but Eric's 10-second penalty, not sure where that one comes from, or maybe my memory is just failing me a little bit. But yeah, that was massive news, and has to be said, I think Scott Bugner and Joel Lask really did everything they needed to, didn't they? They were absolutely bang on the money at Monza, and that's why they're in for a championship fight. And I think we'll be able to bring the championship up on our screen in a couple of seconds' time to see how it has mixed things up. But Eric needs a strong evening tonight at Istanbul. He's currently sat 3rd in practice, but the 2 ahead of him are the 2 BMWs, Scott Bugner, Joel Lask. They are really, really trying to kick on.
Indeed so. The races at Monza then, as I said, sort of mixing up the championship table, although only to some extent, because we operate a drop score system. I've touched upon that already, which means that each driver can discount their lowest scoring night of the season. Now, even from this very early point in the championship, we do take that into account. So the points that you're seeing on your screen now, they are the points scored by each driver on their best of the first 2 weeks. Hope you're writing this down, because I am struggling to follow along and I'm the one explaining it. Essentially, it means that Eric Axelsen can, for the time being, forget that Monza ever happened. He can settle on his 57 points scored at Bahrain, with Joel Lask and Scott Bugner both gaining now to be within 13 points of the championship lead. So too the absent Kyle Felvis, so that penalty not hurting him too much for the time being. Josh Martin surprisingly down in 5th. That's because he had a couple of mistakes at Bahrain, but will be looking to continue his momentum from Monza. Then Elliott Dalton-Ayres, Oliver Gibson, Nicky Taylor, Andy Carroll and Paul Laramie complete the top 10 drivers in the championship. As always, Jack, they're fighting not just for points and for our adoration, but we have some pretty tasty prizes on offer here at the VRRC, which will be handed out mainly at the end of the season.
Yeah, although our adoration is exactly what they really should be fighting for.
Well, quite.
The prizes are just secondary in my opinion, but they're pretty good secondary prizes because the first place of the championship runs away with a Cammus simulation direct drive racing wheel, and that is not just the wheel, the base, of course, as well, being the direct drive, and that is pretty top notch. So they've got it at the VRRC Driver Sim Center, which very fortunate me, Andy, and Lewis have all had to go in. Apparently, Rich is still out there doing building work on it now as we speak, so he's trying to get it to the top spec as possible. So it'll be ready for the prizes that I'm about to read out in a couple of seconds' time. Second place will be having themselves a race seat, GTF1 race seat, which will fit most racing simulators, but of course, the racing simulators built by VRRC, the GTV5 and the GTV3 will be best slotted into place instantly. And of course, third place with a 27-inch Aegon gaming display that we pretty much always include in one of our prizes in our championships as well. The Aegon gaming displays, we're always bringing them in. They're just so popular. And each of those three places will also get a trophy with commemoration of their position. In fourth place and fifth place, you'll get a couple of hours in the VRRC Driver Simulator Center. If you come fourth, you'll get 2 hours. If you come fifth, you'll get 1 hour. And that's down at Leighton Buzzard, down very far south, especially if you live in Leeds. And of course, we've got the extra prize draw, Andy, haven't we? Whereas if you take part in 7 rounds of the championship, but you're not inside the top 5, you get put into a draw where you can potentially win basically the 5th place prize, a 1 hour sim practice session at VRRC. So turning up gives you a good chance at just getting even a single prize, but it's still a prize worth having.
Indeed it is, and we will look forward to crowning another champion at the end of the season. Long way to go, though, before we start thinking about that too much. Now, normally at this point, we would dive into a hot lap and then jump into the qualifying session, which has just begun. But this week, we're going to do things a little bit differently. I'm sure many of you have heard the devastating news regarding the earthquake situation over in Turkey and in Syria. We are racing in Turkey, virtually, at least here tonight. And everyone here at the VRRC, of course, has the victims and those who are dealing with the aftermath of that catastrophe very much in their minds. We also really wanted to show our respect in the only way really that we could. And so we would ask you all, wherever you're watching, to join us now in a minute's silence. I know this is difficult to do perhaps across the virtual world, but I know that we are all one big family and we all are feeling the devastation, at least in some way, of what's happened halfway around the world. So please do join us now in a minute's silence. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. And once again, our thoughts very much with the victims of the terrible natural disaster over in Turkey and Syria. And we hope that those who need the help are able to get it. Well, before we dive into our qualifying session here tonight, we are going to acquaint ourselves with a real fan favourite circuit, appropriately enough in a way, the Istanbul Park circuit in Turkey. And Lewis Edwards, as ever, is our guide.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the third round of the Cammus Simulation GTV3 Championship. We're here at Istanbul Park. Heading into turn 1, we're going to brake just on the 100 metre board, take an early apex and get back to the power as soon as you can. Use up the road on the exit as we now head right, minimise the scrub on the tyres through here, but get back over to the right hand side for turn 3. You want to brake just as this curb ends on the right hand side, keep quite tight to the apex curb, then let it run to the middle of the track using a fair bit of curb through 4, and then we go back over to the right hand side for 5. Early apex to get it back on the power as the exit's quite crucial here. We've got quite a big little flat out section here. So we head now towards turn 7. Again, another corner where you want to get early back to the power. So we brake early, get it rotated early and back to the power as soon as we can. Then release it out up towards turn 8. Flat out in an F1 car, very much not the case in a GTV3. So we're going to be balancing the throttle, and then we get back to the power for this final part, and we slingshot out now down towards the turn 9 and 10 chicane. You want to brake just on the 100-meter board here, get a nice early apex, use up all of the road that you can, and get back to power as soon as you can, as we've got the biggest flat out section on the track approaching. So the exit is going to be crucial. This is where we might see some slipstream come qualifying and the race. And I think we're going to see most of our overtaking manoeuvres up the inside into this final technical section, which we're approaching now. Brake just after the 150-meter board. Use the curb and the throttle to rotate the car. You might have to get it to slide to get that extra speed out of it. Use all of the curb for the right-hander. Back over to the right to open up the final corner. And then back on the power nice and early. Maximise the exit. Don't use too much of the Astro as it can get unsettled. And that completes a lap of Istanbul Park.
So, a guide around what is a real fan favourite track. As I said, the drivers really enjoy this place too, and it's a track that, to my knowledge, we haven't used, at least for a very long time here at the VRRC, Jack. One that I'm interested to see exactly what it produces tonight. I think we'll get some pretty good racing from our GT cars. It's certainly a challenging circuit, though, and one at which I think we might see a few mistakes, if nothing else, just because drivers are not that familiar with it.
Well, yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Because we're actually using a lot of tracks in this calendar that we're not used to using at the VRC, and we like to try and, because they're a bit too mainstream almost, they're a bit too well known, and we like to try and use ones like the Norris ring, things like that. But ironically, that means that we never use the mainstream tracks, therefore we don't know them as well. So it's a bit of a conundrum, really. But you know what, we're here, and hopefully everybody's put in enough practice laps to learn the track. You see Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who's currently second, hunkered up behind one of the Porsches, who jumps out the way. I think that was Nicky Taylor, potentially, who might have just got in the way of Elliot Dalton-Ayres there, but I wouldn't say enough to really hurt him. He's still got 8 minutes to go or so. But currently, Andy, Scott Bugner, top of the timing. And I said that he's going to try and push on, use that momentum from Monza. I tell you what, he's really pushing on strong.
He is, isn't he? And doing this with a little chunk of ballast on board the car as well, as a result of his 2 second-place finishes a week ago. Of course, his teammate Joel Lask will be a little bit heavier, doing better in the championship, and he had a better result, or pair of results overall, a week ago. And perhaps that therefore even explains why he is down in 4th place, although quite a few drivers, I would say, have not yet extracted the maximum that they have in their locker in this qualifying session. Elliot Dalton-Ayres goes 2nd fastest. Elliot qualified 3rd a week ago, and in my mind, Jack, hadn't actually been able to deliver upon that qualifying pace in the race, but came out of it with a 3rd and a 5th place finish. And Elliot showing that Ford GT, whilst it's low in numbers perhaps on the grid, with only 2 of them represented, it is as competitive a car as any.
Yeah, I feel like Elliot sort of went under the radar a little bit. I actually forgotten that he even qualified so well. So I think there was so much drama surrounding him that we sort of didn't really take into account how good an evening he actually had. And he's clearly trying to replicate such things here at Turkey. So I'm looking forward to maybe focusing a little bit more on Elliot Dalton-Ayres and seeing if he can translate the qualifying pace into that race pace. We can see them going through the famed triple left-hander here at Turkey, one of the most famous complexes of corners in the motorsport world, even though it doesn't actually get that much feature anymore, thanks to the fact that it's not on the F1 calendar. Yeah, I'm very interested to see how the Ford gets on. Maybe Monza favoured a few of the cars. It doesn't look like Turkey favours any particular car. We got 2 of the BMWs in the top end, got 2 of the Chevrolets at the top end, a Ford GT, a Porsche in there as well. So none of them, you could argue, are really very slow here, which is exactly what we like to see.
No, absolutely. I would argue that perhaps if any of the cars were going to go well here, it would be the Porsche. Lots of tight corners, the rear-engine cars strong out of the traction zones. But, of course, Kyle Felvers, who has been the fastest of our Porsche drivers so far this season, is absent tonight. So perhaps explains why the Porsche is not perhaps featuring towards the front. But BMW from Ford from Chevrolet is the order, and Scott Bugner going quickly again on this lap as he drops down through the left-right chicane there at turns 9 and 10 and onto the back straight, I suppose, which is a very long flat-out section, broken up by that flat-out right-hander at turn 11, and then spotting the braking point into turn 12. Not an easy thing to do, uphill braking zone as well, or uphill run, but then it sort of flattens out into the braking zone, and that means it's easy to overrun. Scott Bugner looks like he's doing it well, though. Eric Axelson has just improved to second. Let's see what Scott can do, though.
Yeah, Scott is gone purple in Sector 1, he's gone green in Sector 2, he's on a flyer right now, so is Eric Axelson, having jumped up to second. It was within a tenth, but it's now within just 0.3 of a second, as Scott Bugner does extend his lead at the top end of the order. Elliot Dalton-Ayres doesn't look like he's got much of a response in third to Eric Axelson's absolute flyer. And in fact, actually, if we're looking at the breakdown of the times, Eric's got a 10th in him. On that final sector, so the times are closer than we think between the championship leader and the championship contender, Scott Bugner and Eric Axelson, not in that order, of course. Nicky Taylor, he went green in sector 3, but his green in sector 3 was still about 2 or 3 tenths off of everybody else. Oh, and that's John Jones, and talking about 2 or 3 tenths off, he's about 2 or 3 meters off, isn't he, the road at the moment? Hopefully he'll rejoin soon.
Not entirely sure where that is, actually.
It's on the main street. Tell you that.
Oh, okay, that's an interesting place to have an accident, and John Jones surprising me, certainly, with the particular bit of the Turkish scenery that he's taking a look at. Following Josh Martin along now then as he makes his way up the hill towards turn 7, and Josh Martin, reigning champion, of course, here at the VRRC after his success in the touring cars in our last major championship at least, running inside the top 5 for the time being, and we'll be looking, Jack, I suspect, to try and improve a little from there.
Yeah, no, it's Josh, obviously champion last time round in our last major championship, and here in the GTs, he's enjoying, it seems, the Chevrolet, the mid-engined rear-wheel drive bad boy that he's got behind the wheel here, but he's got Eric Axelson as a teammate, and it seems Eric Axelson's currently got the edge of him a little bit as well. I say a little bit, it's 0.6 of a second that he has to find to catch up to his LB Motorsport. No, not LB Motorsport teammate. I do apologise. That's Scott Bugner and Josh. I'm talking about Mean Green Racing teammates, of course. Joel Lask and Scott Bugner. Speaking of LB Motorsport, Scott in first and Joel just inside the top 5. But realistically, they've got a long way to go as well. 0.7 of a second as Ethan Hill jumps up into 8th position. I know there's plenty of people in the YouTube chat watching for the likes of Ethan Hill and Nicky Taylor, so please do give your support as Josh Martin jumps up into 4th place with a purple sector 2 and a green sector 1. His sector 3, though, half a second down pretty much on Scott Bugner's purple sector 3, so there is plenty of time left in the locker for Josh Martin. He is very quick in the first 2/3 of the lap, just needs to hook up that last one, and he could potentially be in with the top row starts as we go into this one. We have momentarily lost Andy McEwen, so we'll try and get him back. He was having a few internet glitches, so we'll get him back before the start of the race, if anybody's wondering why I'm hogging the mic. But Nicky Taylor here, he's having to fill the shoes here a little bit of his teammate Kyle Felvis. We've already mentioned that he's not here today, so Nicky's having to fly the flag for the Porsches along with his teammate Ethan Hill. Well, sub-teammate. Ethan is, I believe Nicky Taylor is not actually part of the HFT Motorsport officially. He's the alarm company team, I believe. But him and Ethan Hill, Carl Felvis, all still do work very closely together. So we'll be pretty much treating Nicky and Ethan as teammates. I believe I heard a ping in my ear. Does that signify the incoming voice of an Andy McEwen?
It does indeed, and I'm hoping I'm actually going to be able to see what's going on the track now, so I can fully keep you abreast of how the qualifying session's going, although so far the signs are not that good, I must report. Scott Bugner, though, coming out of the final corner, I can see that, by 1/4 of a second plus, he is already on course for the pole position. Scott Bugner looking to try and make this 3 different pole sitters from the first 3 qualifying sessions, and at both of the first 2 rounds that we've had at Bahrain and at Monza, the driver who qualified on pole for race 1 has converted that into a race win. So if he can stay there to the end of the session, Jack, this bodes very well indeed for Scott.
Yeah, no, he'll be absolutely desperate for it, won't he? Because he I wouldn't say playing second fiddle to Joel last week, but you know, inter-team rivalry is always there, and we actually did try and have a chat to Joel Lask twice last week, and we didn't have time to do it because the sessions were cut so short. It was a bit of a shame, and so Joel didn't get his chance in the limelight, i.e. our commentary box. But Scott certainly did at the end of race 2, so I wonder if we'll be having another chat to Scott in a couple of minutes' time. 20 seconds left to go before the end of this qualifying session, and even though we've got that progressive track state on, I was about to say it doesn't look like we're going to get anybody improving their times, but having said that, Eric Axelsson has just gone green in Sector 1. Elliot Dalton-Ayres has also gone green in Sector 1, so Scott Bugner doesn't seem to be going much quicker, but Eric Axelsson and Elliot Dalton-Ayres could be piling some pressure on. Oh, there we go. Elliot Dalton-Ayres goes purple in Sector 2. Joel Lask went across the line there, no improvements from him. Oliver Gibson, green in Sector 1 as well, so we are seeing him improve times. Oliver Gibson just gone green in Sector 2 as well, but we've got to turn our attention to Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who's gone green Sector 1. Purple Sector 2. What can the Ford GT pull out the bag here as they go round the final corner? Can he hook it up with a nice exit? Gets a bit squirrely, has to correct it. Gets his foot flat to the floor. Can he go to pole position? Elliot Dalton-Ayres, he can, on pole position by 600ths of a second ahead of the BMW of Scott Bugner, who doesn't seem to be improving whatsoever. Eric Axelsson going through the penultimate corner now. He's green Sector 1. His Sector 2's nothing to write home about, though. Can he try and get that sweeping wide angle? He misses the apex slightly, but he doesn't have to correct. Coming across the line, can he interrupt the front two? It's Eric Axelsson who'll start in 3rd place unless Josh Martin can say something about it.
Indeed so. Let's see what Josh has got up his sleeve then. Not unlike Josh to improve late in the day. And of course the track conditions getting better and better with every lap. He's already moved up into 4th place, was at the back of the top 5 a while ago, and he will come across the line and on this occasion not improve and stays in 4th. He has at least got himself ahead of Joel Lask though, and that could be significant as we fast approach the end of the qualifying session. Joel Lask here making his way towards the flag. Now is Joel on a hot lap? Looks as though he's still pushing reasonably hard, and he'll be looking to try and find at least a 10th or so to try and get back onto the top 2 rows.
Yeah, he is. He's pushing hard, but I don't think it's coming up trumps for him. He's not gone green in Sector 1 or 2, so it seems to be a slightly slow lap, and as he goes to the pit lane, I'm pretty sure we can go to an advert with confidence to say that Elliot Dalton-Ayres will be the driver we're speaking to in a couple of minutes' time.
Welcome back to Istanbul Park and the Cammus Simulation GTV3 Championship qualifying complete, and it's a new name at the top of the times. Elliot Dalton-Ayres with a really strong qualifying effort, and Elliot, I think, is going to have a chat with Jack whilst I continue to play around with my PC. Jack, over to you.
Yes, enjoy playing around and trying to get the stream to work. Elliot Dalton-Ayres alongside us in the commentary box for what I believe is this the first time ever that you've come in for a pole position interview, Elliot?
The second, because I had a pole at Croft in the Civics.
Well, I tell you, that is far too far back for me to remember. Congratulations. I do apologise for forgetting that one. But I tell you what, it's been a long time coming for you then, hasn't it? And these GT cars, they seem to suit you well. You qualified well. You did well at Monza as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm liking this Ford. I mean, it's very quick, very quick off the line. So hopefully I can utilize that at race one, and then hopefully just get away from everyone, and then try and get that race win.
I was going to say the Ford is not been a particularly popular choice. What sort of made you gravitate towards it?
I was gonna go for the Aston, but
That's
just
also not a popular choice.
yeah, but in the test server that we did before the championship, it just for me the Aston didn't want to turn, and then I turned my attention to the Ford, and it seems to be doing me quite nicely.
I was going to say, you seem to be hustling around a number of the tracks that we've been to already very, very well. This is a completely different championship, isn't it? The GTs than we've had before for a while. We've obviously done lots of Civics and touring cars and MX-5s and stuff like that. Do you think this is a step up? Do you think it sort of spiced things up in the way that you were hoping?
Yeah, I guess so because I guess with this there's quite a bit more like door to door action, whereas in the touring cars it wasn't as much I thought, but with these it's very much like trying to catch them if you go for like a slide or get tapped. Whereas in the Honda or well the touring cars you could just plant your foot and you'd be away again. So I think there's a bit more skill involved in these.
I was going to say that extra high power and obviously the aerodynamics in these really do make it very entertaining. But I've never heard anybody say that there's more door-to-door action in GT racing than there is in touring car racing. But you never know. Whatever works, it works, doesn't it? It's because it seems to be throwing up some interesting results. Is there a championship charge on from you then? If this is the pace that you're showing at Monza, you've stepped it up at Turkey. Do you think there's an opportunity here for you that maybe you could stamp some authority?
Absolutely, definitely. I'm going for that win and going for another podium race too to get some good points and get me back in that pack of the championship fight.
Oh, fantastic. We wish you luck, Elliot. Very pleased to have you in the comms box. Always nice to see another pole sitter as well. Good luck for race one, and we'll potentially be speaking to you afterwards. So that was Elliot Daltonez coming in for an interview for the first time since Croft in the Civic Cup, would you believe? I can't believe I didn't remember that off the top of my head, that niche little bit of information. But there we go. Always nice to have a chat with Elliot. And Andy, I'm not entirely sure if you're there or not, but he sounds like a confident man wanting to go for a championship push.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that he can. He's got a car that clearly is capable of doing the business. We know that Elliot is a rapid driver as well. And he just needs to, I think, maximise those opportunities. He's qualified even better this week than he did last time at Monza, where he qualified third, finished third in race one. He's just got to do the same thing again now, but this time from the front of the grid rather than the front of the second row. So interesting to see how he gets on over the course of tonight, at least. I think if he is going to mount a championship charge, it really does have to start tonight because he finds himself a little ways off the championship lead after a slightly up and down start to the season. But yeah, looking strong. Elliot's always a confident bloke, isn't he? And I'm not at all surprised to hear that he's gunning for championship success here this season.
Yeah, he's not going to have it easy anytime soon, is he? Because he's got Scott Bugner alongside him on the front row of the grid, Eric Axelson just behind him. We know Eric can get literally a stone off the line without an engine. He's absolutely rapid, isn't he, when he comes to race starts? So starting from the second row won't affect him too much. You've got Josh Martin, who's ever consistent as well, and Joel Lask in fifth place. So he's really put himself into a hard situation in terms of the fighting for the championship. But you got to beat the best. You got to race against the best to beat the best, haven't you?
Exactly that. Yeah, you've got to, to win these championships, you're going to have to go up against some pretty serious talent. And not that the likes of Elliot are not talented enough to do that, but certainly he is going to be up against it, I suspect, as we are about to start our first race of the night.
We are indeed. So as the lights come on, the engine notes are rising. That could only mean one thing. We are racing here at the Istanbul Park in Turkey. And Elliot Daltonez looks like he got a good start. But here comes Eric Axelson trying to charge up the inside of Josh Martin. And is he going to break himself, Josh Martin? Yes, he is. Sorry, Josh was in the Corvette. And I think Scott Bugner was in the BMW. But the BMW managed to just about get that cut back as we saw somebody else flying off on the outside. I think it may have been Stuart Vickers. There is Josh Martin's teammate, Eric Axelson, in the slightly darker Corvette. Always makes it slightly difficult off the start line as the two Porsches of Oliver Gibson and Nicky Taylor try and fight for the position just behind them. They may be two Porsches, but don't mistake that for being teammates. They are definitely not teammates. They just drive a similar car, and it looks like it's taking the track very similar indeed. It's allowing the top 5 to break away somewhat as Oliver Gibson gets the better of the Elan Company Porsche, who gets a little bit squirrely on exit, and I think allows Andy Carroll to potentially get some traction down and get around the outside. No, Nicky Taylor holds on to that position for the time being. But Elliot Dalton-Ayres did exactly what he was hoping for, and to be fair, exactly what he said he would do, and that's hold on to that pole position after a really good race start. Scott Bugner in second place had a threat from Josh Martin, but he managed to hold off, and Eric Axelsen lost a place to the BMW of Joel Lask off the start and into the turn 1. Oliver Gibson, Nicky Taylor swapping positions as well. I think Oliver Gibson qualified in 8th place, so he's done very well to jump up to 6th. Nicky Taylor maybe slightly struggling with the race start. I think we started with grip percentage at 100% here, so there's not going to be a progressive grip state. This is what you're going to get on the tin, and so drivers just need to warm their cars up as Sam Zero goes for a dive up the inside. Let's hope he's warmed his tyres up efficiently. Yes, he has. Good move on Andy Carroll.
Indeed so. Andy Carroll then slipping down 1 position as they come towards the conclusion then of the opening lap of racing. Out onto the main straight they go, and things now just starting to settle down. Dalton-Ayres leading, Bugner second, Josh Martin third, but it is that leading pair who perhaps are starting to make a bit of a break now. Now, how aggressive is Scott Bugner going to be here to try and grab a race win? He knows that he's already in a good points position. He's outscoring those that really matter. How much of a threat does he see Elliot Dalton-Ayres posing as the rest of the season goes on? Well, we might be about to find out.
Yeah, well, Elliot, obviously, with those drop scores, he's in 6th place at the moment in terms of the Drivers' Championship, but he sounds confident, and he's got the pace to be confident as well, to be fair. And when I say 6th place, that's only 4 points behind Josh Martin, who is currently sat in 3rd. So, yeah, although Scott Bugner will be fairly happy, he'll know that he's, not to be naive. He needs to try and pick up the most amount of points as possible, especially early in the season, because you never know what can happen a little later down the line, and he doesn't want to waste those drop scores if he can help it. Drivers who have potentially not done so well, Ethan Hill, he's currently down in 11th place, a strong position for that reverse grid potentially. But, it's not ideal for where Ethan probably wants to be. Paul Laramie as well, a little strange to see him all the way down there. And I think Stuart Vickers was the driver who ended up having a little bit of contact off the turn 1. And I believe that's why he's all the way down in 16th place and about 6 seconds off of the driver ahead of him. So hopefully we'll see him a little bit stronger in race number 2. Here comes Oliver Gibson. He's not satisfied with overtaking Nicky Taylor. He wants to go for the jugular as well. And championship leader Eric Axelsen feels the wrath of the Porsche going up the inside. Eric trying to get that cut back, but I think through the penultimate corner. Oh, it's a big slam of the curb there by Oliver Gibson. That's not going to help him whatsoever. Unsettles the car. And even though he's trying to get that cut back down into turn 1, it's going to be a close run thing. Nicky Taylor's probably watching this, rubbing his hands and licking his lips as they go into turn 1, side by side ahead of him. Oliver Gibson on the inside, Eric Axelsen, we know how smooth he can be with the accelerator and the steering, and he's doing exactly that, leaving the Porsche with plenty of room on the inside whilst carrying that important momentum around the outside. Nicky Taylor almost tried to side through the middle of them as it looked on our screens then, but Oliver Gibson comes away with 5th place and beats Eric Axelsen to it for the time being.
Yes, he does. So Eric Axelsen right in the thick of the battles then, as he makes his way further around the lap. And this is not really going according to the script for Eric, is it? Started off the season so well back at Bahrain, but now just really struggling to keep that car even inside the top 5. Nicky Taylor is not going to be backwards and coming forwards behind him either. And so Eric Axelsen finding himself in a bit of a nightmare situation and several seconds now off the lead group. Joel Lask also struggling for pace a little bit at the moment. It seems that perhaps is the increase in weight that he's carrying for this week starting now to take effect.
It is indeed, yes. We do know that Eric is buttery smooth with the inputs though, and but all of these drivers, apart from Kenny Press and Ethan Hill, where's Eric going? Eric's completely missing his braking zone. I'm not entirely sure. He's going right round the outside there, and that's going to lose him a position to Nicky Taylor. But more importantly, he's going to lose him an enormous amount of track position. He won't be in the fight with the 2 Porsches ahead of him, but he will be in a fight with the fellow Corvette and of Andy Carroll, and then Reece Bell and the Aston Martin. Reece Bell, who's actually trying to mount a bit of an attack here on Andy Carroll. He smells blood in the water, does Reece, and he's trying to go around the outside. going to be always a bit difficult there as he tries to mount the curve to get over a good drive and try. There's about 3 corners here that you have to get the cut back on every single one of them to make it stick. And that's exactly what we saw Oliver Gibson do a little earlier on, about a lap ago, but he isn't close enough to try and take any kind of effective Andy Carroll. So Reece Bell in the Aston Martin has to hold on to his place for the time being, as it looks like Gibson and Taylor are actually going to reignite their battle from earlier on. And well, what I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, is that Elliot Daltonez pulled away by half a second to Scott Bugner, and at the moment they're just trading purple sectors as we still focus on Reece Bell and Andy Carroll being one of the closest battles that we got out there on circuit. The top 2 have pulled away slightly from Josh Martin, but realistically it's the top 3 pulling away from Joel Lask actually by a second and a half. So we may well see a battle for the race lead in a couple of laps' time. It's nice to see, Andy, that we've got 3 different manufacturers all battling it out for that race lead. Looks like, well, it sounds like Andy might well be trying to struggle with his internet connection a little bit more, so we'll commentate and talk about Reece Bell as Kenny Press decides to take my attention completely the wrong way as his car faces the completely wrong way as well. Reece has managed to get that move on Andy Carroll done and dusted. They both dropped on Eric Axelson by about a second and a half, so all that fighting, all that squabbling may have been to try and fight over who's going to have a go at the reigning champion, not reigning champion, but one of the VRRC many champions, but it's not going to be at the moment. So, as I said, well, Elliot Daltonez has managed to actually gain about 3 or 4 tenths ahead of Scott Bugner. Josh Martin's closed in on Scott a little bit, so actually may not have been the best sector for the second place driver for the time being. Nicky Taylor's got ahead of Oliver Gibson, who's trying to answer back around the outside through the penultimate corner. That means he'll have the inside for for the last one. Here comes the charging Eric Axelson as well, who sees them, and they go 3 wide. It's going to be Eric Axelson on the inside. No, he hunkers up. He actually tries to follow Nicky Taylor around the outside of Oliver Gibson. Is that going to be the wise call? He's going to be boxed in a little bit there, and he's not going to be able to get that cut back. Hasn't he missed his apex yet again? Yes, he has. Eric Axelson so uncharacteristically just missing completely the corner and the braking zone as well. It's not been his night. Maybe that extra weight is really killing him. Not sure how much of the practice laps that he did here at Turkey, but it just seems that he's not able to get the consistency that we're so used to seeing from the Swedish assassin. Nicky Taylor, though, got past Oliver Gibson. Eric Axelson can't seem to find a way to follow through and put his stamp on this race for the time being. Reece Bell actually is looking a very interested party behind them. Oh, have we got an Andy McEwen attempting to make contact? Oh, no, he's told me to hang on just a touch. I think Andy McEwen may be back with us in a couple of seconds' time, but I think he'll be communicating through his laptop, ladies and gentlemen, so I do apologise if he sounds a little bit different than he usually does. We'll try and get that streamlined as quickly for you as possible. 11 minutes to go then in this race, and really the biggest battle at the moment is between those who are on your screen at the right now, and that's the 5th place all the way down to 9th with the likes of Nicky Taylor, Oliver Gibson, Eric Axelson, Reece Bell, and of course Andy Carroll, who's just hanging on to the back of this little battle here. Elliot Daltonez, Scott Bugner pulled away somewhat from Josh Martin, who all of a sudden has dropped off by about 2 seconds. No idea what happened there. Joel Lask has caught him up quite substantially as well, so maybe there was a move for Josh Martin or Scott Bugner that maybe didn't come off, and that's dropped him back an enormous amount of time. Dave in the YouTube chat as well, getting his drivers mixed up a little bit, and it looks like Kyle Felvis is enjoying his time in Dubai. He's potentially got a pizza on his way to his room. As Nicky Taylor, Kyle will be enjoying this though. Nicky Taylor up the inside of Oliver Gibson, and this has been a race-long battle that I hope doesn't extinguish anytime soon, it has to be said. The 2 Porsches going at it, hammer and tongs, and almost allowing the other drivers a little bit of a whiff of hope as well. A little bit of an opportunity potentially, especially if they make a little bit of contact. They so far have kept it sparkly clean. Never know, could run out, the luck could run out, but at the moment you wouldn't put it past them to just keep this up as Eric Axelson slots up the inside of Oliver Gibson, who may well be suffering just a touch there after going side by side with Nicky Taylor for a few too many laps. Have we got an Andy McEwen with us?
I am here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, and we can almost hear you as well as we did before. Have you managed to get your mic working?
In a roundabout sort of fashion, yes. I wouldn't want to distract the viewers any further from this very exciting race to explain the not so exciting process I've just gone through, but the main thing is I'm back and I can see what has been a very interesting race so far. Elliot Dalton is really delivering upon that confidence that he had pre-race and has managed to build up a 1.4 second lead over Scott Bugner, and yeah, Andy Carroll at the back of this group. Do you know what, Jack? I can see the racing. This is great.
Hey. It is always nice when you can actually see what you're commentating on as well, isn't it? Ladies and gentlemen at home, it'll be an absolute feast for the eyes as here comes Reece Bell up the inside of Oliver Gibson, who was very, very aggressive in the early stages of the race, but it seems maybe his tyres have worn off a little bit. I would be very surprised if that was the case, but just doesn't seem to hold on to the pace and the places that he showed early on in the race. It's all that rally right. It was completely unintentional, but yeah, it was Reece Bell really pushing on strong. It's nice to see Reece Bell up there, to be honest, though, Andy, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. He's been getting quicker, actually. I think really enjoys these GT cars and has now started to insert himself into the top 10 more and more frequently, really. Reece's results so far this season sort of speaking for themselves. He's had 2 top 10s, a lowest finish, which was 12th in the reverse grid race at Monza. I recall him getting involved in some shenanigans in that race. So, yeah, when he keeps him out of trouble, he is getting more and more competitive, and that's really lovely to see from a driver who has been plugging away at this for a little while now. Had a couple of brief moments where he was on the pace. I seem to recall he went okay in the Civic Cup a long while ago, but this is by far the strongest we've seen him since then.
It is indeed. I've just got news from Lewis Edwards that apparently overheating tyres around this track and in these cars, it's quite a big issue. So do you reckon that's something that, I mean, I know you couldn't see the first half of this race, but Oliver Gibson, he charged through about 4 or 5 cars with absolutely no hesitation whatsoever. Do you think maybe there's a possibility that he's cooked his tyres and that's why Eric Axelsson and Nicky Taylor are able to pull a little bit on him, and that's why Reece Bell maybe is attacking him a little bit stronger now as well?
It would make sense, wouldn't it? That's something I've always found actually with this sim in particular as well. The tyres are very temperature sensitive, and so if you do start taking it, really taking it out of them in the early part of the race, then that can often come back to bite you later on. And you can see the way Gibson is dropping away from these two now, having lost out to them earlier on. Nicky Taylor, the man who's really been on the move, though, moving from 7th to 5th, but for how much longer? Because Eric Axelsson is looking to the outside as they make their way towards the final sequence of corners. Relatively easy to defend into there, though, as Nicky Taylor just found out. For the time being, 5th place is still his. As they come off the final turn, the rear engine Porsche hunkers down, carries the speed across the line. I don't think Eric's going to be quite close enough to attack into turn 1.
No, but he is filling the mirrors, isn't he? He's trying to give Nicky Taylor something to think about, even if he's not actually really doing it. And again, he's just completely missed his braking zone. That's 3 times this race so far, Andy, that we've seen Eric Axelsson just completely go straight on and miss the apex, miss the braking zone, and lose all of the time that he was making up before. And what do you think that's down to? Because we never see that kind of mistake from Eric Axelsson, do we? He's one of the most consistent drivers out there, buttery smooth in his inputs, very, very good normally, but he just doesn't seem to be able to get this Turkish line together.
Yeah, he had a night a bit like this in the Touring Car Championship, didn't he, at Paul Ricard, where he had a spinning qualifying and then buzzed the engine in the race. And we said at the time that this is by far the worst we've ever seen Eric perform over a night of racing here at the VRRC. Now, okay, he hasn't broken the engine yet on his Chevrolet Corvette, but certainly there is something that he's not happy with this car and track combination. And as you said, it does seem to centre around braking. Now, that first corner is a tricky corner at which to stop because you're coming over a crest, it's slightly off-cambered. If the Corvette is having any handling imbalances on the braking, then it will show into a corner like that. But strange that he is struggling, whereas his teammate, Josh Martin, not just another Corvette, but his teammate, presumably they've been working together on setups and whatnot in the week ahead of this round. Josh is doing really well, running in a solid 3rd place, so this does seem to be a problem that is only really affecting Eric.
Yeah, it's localised on Eric, really, which is strange because he qualified so well. And I'd probably give the comment of the day to Dave in the YouTube chat saying Eric's braking points are about as reliable as Andy's internet, it seems. So, yeah, I like that a lot, Dave. If I could like a YouTube chat comment, I'd be liking that one right now. But yeah, it is strange considering, as I said, Eric actually qualified in 3rd place and he actually dropped all the way down to 8th at one point during this race. So not entirely sure what's been happening with him. Maybe he's chuck someone else in the sim for race 1. I'm not sure, maybe to try and make it a little bit harder for himself, because the first round of the championship, he was absolutely flying, wasn't he? And we couldn't actually see past him. We couldn't see anybody else even challenging him for a championship, let alone, you know, sort of running away with it and opening it up to about 3 or 4 drivers potentially in the running. So very strange from Eric, but you never know. Race 2 is soon to be on its way. He might well get it together for that point. Nicky Taylor, though, has to be said, I think this is potentially one of the best we've seen him in the GT. And we normally so competitive in every other championship that we do here, Andy, isn't he? But he hasn't really got to grips with the Porsche yet. It seems that maybe there's signs that he's starting to get there.
Yeah, 100%. This is the best we've seen of him, racing his way nicely into the top 5. Remember, didn't start in the top 5, or at least wasn't running top 5 by the end of the opening lap, but he's raced really well to get back up there, and is now keeping, admittedly, a slightly troubled Eric Axelsen at bay, and Nicky running really strongly in this race. That's what we want to see from Nicky Taylor. We are used to seeing him battling at the front in these championships, and really been a regular race winner, actually, for the last couple of seasons that we've run. So, a way to go yet before he's winning races in this championship, maybe. But as you said, perhaps that second race reverse grid might be his time to shine. Something else that's happening that I think is worth pointing out is that the lead gap is shrinking. It was 1.5 seconds, then it was 1.2 seconds, and now it's hovering between 9/10 and a second. Elliot Dalton-Ayres on that lap nearly half a second slower than Scott Bugner chasing him down. So Scott Bugner really now starting to come back at Elliot Dalton-Ayres. Elliot stole that pole position away from Scott, and Scott would now quite like to do the same thing with the race win.
Yeah, well, it was only about 0.3 of a second to half a second for a long time. All of a sudden, something happened to Scott. He dropped all the way back, and now you're right. He does seem to be pulling in Elliot Dalton-Ayres at a rate of knots with only 3 minutes to go. That's probably going to be 2 laps. Is there going to be enough time? Is Elliot Dalton-Ayres going to start choking maybe if under the pressure of leading a race? He hasn't done that very often. He did get a pole position, as we heard him say in the interview beforehand, but I'm not entirely sure what his stats are in terms of race victories. I don't think he's had that many, that's for sure. So it is a pressurised situation to be in. Here is Scott Bugner, especially when you got that BMW in the rearview mirrors. It must completely fill everything that you have to look backwards, Andy, because it's absolutely massive, isn't it, that thing? Especially in the camo, it looks menacing.
There are astronauts on the space station, I think, who are a bit worried about that thing filling its mirrors. It is an absolutely enormous beast, this BMW, and yet a really effective race car. I often liken it to the Bentley Continental GT3 car, which had so much success internationally. That was a car that just didn't look like it should work on a racetrack, and yet through good engineering, it was able to do so. Good engineering and balance of performance, it must be said, was able to run pretty well. Up the hill they head then, timing tower going a little bit haywire. It is definitely still Elliot Dalton-Ayres leading the way. Has Josh Martin gone to the pit lane or something? Because suddenly Josh is showing as the race leader, and that sometimes is a sign that a driver has teleported back to the pits.
No, he's still out there,
isn't it? So, okay, timing screen doing some strange things and confusing us, but what we do have, Jack, is a one-lap shootout for the win.
Yeah, we do, and the BMW hunkering down, roaring its engine, I imagine, to try and catch up to the Ford GT, who does only have 1 lap left. But Scott Bugner did put a green Sector 1 and a green Sector 2 together in that last lap, so he is starting to turn it up a little bit. And we know, Andy, that it's so much easier to chase someone down, especially when you get a bit of positive reinforcement that you can see the gap visibly coming down every single braking zone. You can start to smell the exhaust fumes basically of the drivers ahead of you. And I know we're in sim racing, I know you can't smell the exhaust fumes, but trust me, your brain plays funny things when you're chasing down for a race win. So I think Scott Bugner will be very keen for that one indeed. But to be fair, I don't think Elliot Dalton-Ayres has put a foot wrong, has he, Andy, in the majority of this race? I know you haven't seen the majority of this race, but trust me, he's been pretty impeccable.
Yeah, for sure. He's driven really well, and okay, hasn't had a huge amount of pressure, but he's managed the race well, disappeared up the road in the early stages, and that meant that even if Scott Bugner did come back at him, he would have a bit of real estate to try and bridge, which he's started to do, but just can't quite get to him. He's flashing the lights there down into the chicane, but Dalton-Ayres not likely to pay any attention to that, and if anything, it slowed Scott down and distracted him more, because he lost a couple of tenths there, and with 3 corners to go now, Jack, I do suspect that Elliot Dalton-Ayres is on his way to victory.
Yeah, wastes power, doesn't it? Flashing those lights, it doesn't do him any favors. He lost 3 horsepower on that straight. Going into the penultimate corner, though, Elliot Dalton-Ayres looks like he's got this wrapped up. That Ford GT has done him wonders. It may not be the most popular car out there on the grid. In fact, only John Jones is running the same car, but it is a race-winning car here at Turkey at the Istanbul Park. Elliot Dalton-Ayres, top step of the podium. Scott Bugner takes the BMW into second, with Josh Martin rounding out the 3 manufacturers strong podium with his 3rd place to his name. Joel Lask, in 4th place, and Nicky Taylor crosses the line to hold on for 5th, ahead of championship leader Eric Axelson. For how much longer, though? Elva Gibson in 7th place. Reese Bell comes across the line in 8th. Again, another really good, consistent top 10 finish for Reese. Andy Carroll in 9th, and Sam Zero getting what potentially is one of his first top 10 results in the GTV3 Championship. Ethan Hill crosses the line and on pole position for race number 2, potentially at the moment. Looks like it may well go to the way of Kenny Press, although Stuart Vickers and the timing screen seems to be dropping down the order again. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but I think it's going to be Kenny Press on the pole position for race number 2. So without further ado, we're going to jump to a very quick advert break before we head into the interviews and, of course, that all important reverse.
Welcome back, everyone, to Istanbul Park and the Cammus Simulation GTV3 Championship, and an entertaining first race. Apologies for the couple of technical issues that half of our commentary team were suffering in that race. I think I'm back with you now, and just in time to start having a chat with some of our drivers after what was a very, very interesting first race and a first victory of the season as well for Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who joins us now. Elliot, congratulations. You snatched that pole position. You were confident ahead of the race that you'd be able to hang on, and you delivered on that promise. Well done.
Kind of did what I wanted to, was get a good start off the line, and then fortunately some of the other people got backed up by a flying Josh Martin in front, and I just kind of brought a little bit of joy to me, because it allowed a gap in between me and Scott in second. So yeah, it was just a little bit of pressure near the end because I saw Scott was gaining on me, but other than that, it was a nice little race.
Certainly was. Elliot, we won't keep you too long because I know we're only a couple of minutes away from race 2 starting, but very quickly, your thoughts for that second race?
I'm probably just going to hope to avoid any incidents in turn 1 and lap 1, and then just go from there, try and gain as many places as possible, and hope to get up the pecking order. So, yeah.
Sounds like a plan. Congratulations, Elliot, on that first race victory of the season. Now Jack can go and chat to our runner-up finisher.
Thank you.
Yes, I can, and it's the Scott Bugner. We had a chat to you last week, Scott, and well, it was after a positive race 2 result, but this time positive race 1 result. A step in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've, I don't want to jinx it, but it looks like we've got the car sort of where we want it now, me and Joel. Car felt good. The tyres, I just tried to back off halfway through the race just to look after the tyres because the front right was overheating, and then it sort of come to me at the end, but maybe a lap or so too late.
I was going to say, you were rapid at that rear end of the race, weren't you? Is that due to the fact that you maybe cooled everything down and you sort of wanted to charge right at the end to see if Elliot wasn't able to hold on to his tyres?
A slight mistake in the triple right-hander, and I just clipped the outside of the curb, and it gave me a lot of understeer, and I put a lot of pressure on the front right. So it just overheated for like a couple of laps. I thought I'll just back it off. Then when I saw Josh go off, I thought, right, just relax for a couple of laps and then push for the last sort of 3 or 4.
Well, it seemed to work for you. We were thinking we were about to get very excited indeed. If you had one more lap, you could have potentially brought it home. But second place is still good for the championship. We'll let you jump away and get ready for race number 2. And potentially we'll have a chat to you after this.
Thank you.
So our third place finisher then, Josh Martin, joins us as well now. And Josh, that's your third place finish of the season so far. Good consistent points. How much further do you think you could have pushed it there given the opportunity?
Yeah, I seem to keep ending up third. But yeah, no, I had a really good launch that time, and I was completely unsighted for turn 1 and got my braking point completely wrong. So luckily, I had Eric and Scott to my right hand side. They're both obviously really good drivers and really aware, so they saw me come in. And luckily, there was no crash. I was lucky to survive that. And yeah, I had a good race. I think quite consistency starting to come in the Corvette. I did have that one bit of a snap when I was behind Scott. But yeah, Elliot and Scott were really fast, so I don't know how much more I'd have been able to do than third.
Well, the good news is you start ahead of them now for race number 2. We'll let you go and make your final preparations for that race, Josh, but congratulations on the podium and best of luck.
Cheers, thank you very much.
So they are your top 3 finishers then from the first race of the night, and we're about to find out, Jack, what our second race has in store for us. Reversed grid, a tight first corner. I predict a little bit of action here.
Yeah, no, there's absolutely no reason why this shouldn't be a typical sim racing reverse grid extravaganza, to be honest. But we're hoping that everybody can keep it semi-cool and collected. We don't mind a bit of argy-bargy. What we don't want is anybody's race being completely ruined, any major damage or anything like that. But it's always entertaining, shall we say, the reverse grid races. And I'm sure they'll be lining up ready and raring to go, just like... Elliot Dalton said, though, avoid the crashes. Let's see if he can put that into practice like he did in race 1.
Yes, indeed. Kenny Press and Stuart Vickers then make up the front row of the grid for this one. Alec Iyengar and John Jones row 2, then Paul Laramie, Ethan Hill, Sam Zero, Andy Carroll, Reese Bell, and Oliver Gibson the top 10, with the front runners from race 1 starting right at the back. Plumes of tyre smoke. Great start made by John Jones, I think that is, coming up the middle of everyone in the Ford GT. It is a good night to be racing a Ford, it seems. Out wide goes Stuart Vickers. Further back there, 3 and 4 wide through the apex of turn 1. You can see our front runners from race 1 really struggling, mired in the pack as they run 3 wide up the hill, and there's contact, and that's Axelson, I think. No, it's Josh Martin. In fact, and both of the green Corvettes are off. Andy Carroll is off. So too is one of the BMWs. That's Scott Buckner. So several championship front runners, Nicky Taylor as well, all off on the exit of turn 2.
Yeah, no, that's absolute madness. I'm amazed we haven't got a safety car, to be honest, as we do normally bring one out for. In fact, there we go. We have got a safety car now, haven't we? John Jones is going to turn into the pace car, but Eric Axelson, Josh Martin, both of them right at the back of the pack, actually included with Nicky Taylor. Those 3 are the bottom 3, which is quite incredible. I mean, I know it's a reverse grid. They were all the way down there anyway, Andy, but it's not going to help them, given the fact that look where Joel Lask has ended up. He's all the way up to 7th place. He's in the championship running. Elliot Dalton has managed to avoid all that as well. He's in 10th. Not a bad start for him. Big sort of news, big changes, big swappings round. But it's a bit of a shame for the top 3, I would have to say. John Jones, Kenny Press, Paul Laramie, they ran away with it, didn't they? They were brilliant on that first corner.
John Jones has been taking starting lessons from Eric Axelson, because he started 4th on the grid, I think, and just came blasting through the middle of the front row to lead into turn 1. Absolutely nailed the start. As for what happened further back, I think there was a little bit of congestion. Someone didn't get a good exit from turn 1, and it was someone towards about 7th or 8th place that stacked the field up. And just as they went out of camera shot, I saw, I think it was Josh Martin trying to go to the left-hand side of Andy Carroll, who was already 3 wide, and there just wasn't the space up through turn 2. So that little bit of congestion, I think, was what caused the problem, really. But now everybody looking to try and settle back down, ready for a race restart, a situation that John Jones probably hasn't found himself in all that often, leading the cars to a restart here. He'll have Kenny Press and Paul Laramie right behind him, but keep an eye to the likes of Ethan Hill, Oliver Gibson, Joel Lask, all looking to try and make good now on this opportunity and try and get onto the podium.
Well, yeah, Oliver Gibson, actually, he's a strong shout, because, of course, he was very aggressive early on in race number 1, potentially cooked his tyres, unfortunately, which meant he dropped off just a touch, but it looks like he's employing a similarly aggressive start to the race too as well, and he wants to carve through the order as quickly as possible, get his head down, and then he can try and figure the tyres out, cross that bridge when he comes to it. When is John Jones going to set the timetable to light? No, he goes very slowly through the penultimate corner, guns it before the final corner. In fact, misses the apex slightly. Nobody's allowed to overtake him. There was a potential little tag, and I don't think he's actually put his foot down yet. There he goes. And that was a bit of a scrappy start, I would say, by John Jones on the restart. Here comes Kenny Press, but here comes Paul Laramie, who is very much ready to raring to go all the way up the inside. Is that Ethan Hill? No, it's Paul Laramie charging up the inside. I think he's missed his braking zone by about 4 or 5 postcodes. He managed to rejoin and just about make it 4 wide. No, there goes through John Jones. He may have butchered the restart, but he holds on to that race lead as there's more spinning in the background. Joel Lask has gone round.
Oh, Joel Lask, who was just starting to pick his way through that, he's been turned around at turn 2 as well. That has not been a good part of the track.
Again.
Yeah, okay, right, yeah, so Axelson round the outside here, he's lost some ground too, but yeah, Joel Lask in all sorts of trouble going through that second corner, but he doesn't get a virtual safety car to rescue him, so he has lost a lot of ground, and that could be significant for the championship. So Jones leads then, Hill second, third Press, fourth Paul Laramie, there's Oliver Gibson trying to go around the outside of Paul, who settled back in fourth after that wide moment at turn 1. A chaotic first few laps here in race 2, as we sort of predicted, and it might not be over. That was Reese Bell, I think, diving up the inside of Alec Igar into turn 8.
Yeah, I think that was a trick of the cameras. He's not quite that close, is he? But he's very, very keen to try and make a mark here. Oliver Gibson is almost, I wouldn't say he's stuck right now, but he doesn't want the BMW Veloc Iyengar having a little bit of a nibble at him, and that's exactly what A-Lock's doing. Heavy on the brakes, and he gets the apex, he gets the move done. Really great move there.
That was a good move under braking. Reese Bell now coming up to challenge as well. He's on the inside of Oliver Gibson, and Gibson really struggling to get the run off the corner there. Through the flat-out right-hander at turn 11 they go, and now the next corner is a tight left-hander, and that should favour the Porsche of Oliver Gibson, who's just trying to hang on here. He is on the medium tyres. Interestingly, John Jones and Kenny Press, both of whom have been really pretty rapid here at the start. They're both on the soft tyres, and from what we saw in race 1, that might not be the best move. Around goes Iyengar. Gibson does well to avoid him, and up the inside of all of them went Elliot Dalton Ayres, I think that was. I'll tell you what, Jack, when your look is in, your look's in.
I'll tell you what, they did very well, all of them, to avoid it, but particular props to Oliver Gibson and Elliot Dalton Ayres. Gibson was the first on the scene. Elliot Dalton Ayres, not Elliot Dalton Ayres, actually managed to take the best line, of course, as well. Where everybody went around the outside, he decided to shove it straight up through the middle, and he managed to get away with it, as well as it looks like he's holding on to Reese Bell, who was really very, very strong this evening. I'm thoroughly impressed with Reese Bell right now. 7th place he's having to deal with, and let Elliot Dalton Ayres go potentially, but still really, really strong evening for him. And Dickie Taylor and Josh Martin are swapping positions a little bit further back. The Porsche and the Corvette fighting over the top 10 positions. They've managed to get their way through, but one driver who hasn't got through, Andy, is Scott Bugner. He's still all the way down in 14th.
Yeah, because he lost not only the track position, but lots of time as well to the pack. So he is, he and Joel Lask, 13th and 14th at the moment. So LB Motorsport, who dominated a week ago at Monza, set for hardly any points in race 2 here. Out wide goes Paul Laramie. That opens the door for Oliver Gibson. And I may be getting ahead of myself slightly here, Jack, but I wonder if this race might now boil down to an Oliver Gibson, Elliot Dalton Ayres showdown, because they are probably, as Paul Laramie tries to go up the inside, ends up giving a place away to Dalton Ayres at the chicane as a result, they are probably the 2 highest placed of our regular front runners, if you like. They're both inside the top 5 now, should be able to keep on making progress, and both will be feeling now that this could be a race win.
Yeah, it's, I mean, thoroughly exciting. I've just been putting some messages about driving the round in the Discord chat, and it's really struggling to find who's going to be better suited for the driver of the round medal. Either Reese Bell, Elliot Dalton Ayres, or in fact Oliver Gibson, just for making it one of the most exciting races, set of races that we've seen so far. There's Eric Axelson forcing his way up the inside of Sam Zero, who I think just got out-muscled a little bit by it. Nicky Taylor tries to take advantage. Paul Laramie, he's sending moves. He looks very ambitious, but they are exactly that. They're ambitious moves, aren't they? As Oliver Gibson goes around the outside of John Jones. Now, what does he have left in the tyre situation? We are 7 minutes in now, 12 or 13 minutes to go pretty much. With those medium tyres on, both John Jones and Kenny Press with those softs maybe have boiled them over slightly. They're going to go starting to get a little bit slower, and through comes some of the medium tyred drivers. what can they do? Can Oliver Gibson, has he cooked it too early? Has Elliot Daltonaire's been forced into taking it a little bit easier in the middle of the pack as well? We'll have to wait and see, but he's good and measured so far, Elliot Daltonaire's. A pole position and a race win to his name. I'm sure he's not keen to get in this with a DNF as Kenny Brest goes round the Triple Eight car, spinning off back a couple of corners earlier than we saw him in qualifying. It is that Eric Axelson.
What is going on? Eric Axelson, I don't know why he was even there, unless he'd had a similar moment to Kenny, just looping it on acceleration there out of turn 7, but he was off the road, and there's another car off now. That was Paul Laramie, so we've got Corvettes suddenly throwing themselves at the scenery. Here comes a recovering Andy Carroll, who's also been off in his Corvette. Paul Laramie, I think, calling it a day. He presumably has damage. If he didn't before, he certainly does now after that latest trip into the barriers. So that really just leaves Josh Martin now as the lone Corvette driver not to have had a major issue in this race. Meanwhile, the two Fords have found each other, and Elliot Daltonaire's coming around the outside of John Jones. This for third position into the final sequence of corners. Desperately late on the brakes, gets it to the apex though. Elliot Daltonaire's is not to be denied.
Yeah, he's absolutely flying, isn't he? And you say when you look's in, it's in, but realistically, he's carving his way through just based on pure skill at the moment and instinct. It's absolutely fantastic. It just seems that he's hit this purple patch of form as Daltonaire's here at Turkey, and he's probably hoping that we can come here every single week, doesn't he? But for GT, he's hustling it around well. I'm sure if he can get it around Turkey, he can get it around anywhere. Bit of momentum, bit of confidence, he can do a driver a world of good.
It certainly can, and Elliot Daltonaire's not necessarily a driver who many of us were looking at as championship contender this season, but every season at the moment we do seem to find a new challenger, don't we? I mean, it wasn't that long ago that Josh Martin was an occasional podium finisher, then he started becoming an occasional race winner, and then he went and stole the Touring Car Championship in the final round in our last season, and we once again now expect him to be competitive in this one. Here comes Reese Bell up the inside of John Jones, as John Jones puts up a slightly sterner defence against the Aston Martin than he did his fellow Blue Oval driver half a lap or so ago, but Reese Bell will go right round the outside, and Reese definitely, I agree, is putting himself firmly in the conversation for driver of the day. He is driving the best we have ever seen of him here, and he's well inside the top 5.
Yeah, no, he's absolutely brilliant, Reese Bell, this evening. I can't commend him highly enough, to be honest. I think he's been not only. I think it's safe to say that we've seen a lot of drivers surprise us breaking into those top 10 and top 5 areas, and then they make a mistake, and or maybe you think, oh, they potentially shouldn't be there. They're not ready to race at that high level. But Reese has shown that he's ready, he's willing, he's quick. I think I'm excited to see whether he steps it up again towards the back end of this championship, and you never know. You said that a couple of drivers like Josh Martin, all of a sudden they appear into the championship contention. Reese Bell might be that one in a couple of championships' time, as Nicky Taylor around the outside of John Jones. Josh Martin trying to follow suit, but getting boxed out a bit this time round. John Jones doesn't need to get out of the way here, ladies and gentlemen. He's fully within his right. No blue flags being shown for him, so he can make this as difficult as he wants, of course, with hopefully as legally as he wants so as well.
Yeah, absolutely. John Jones perfectly entitled to drive defensively, which he is doing. And let's see whether or not he's able to fend off the reigning VRRC champ. Josh Martin not quite able to get past him into the first corner there, but will look to try and get through as soon as he can. And for Josh, really, this is now just a points exercise. He just needs to try to outscore the LB Motorsport BMWs, his teammate Eric Axelson, which he is set to do, and doesn't therefore really need to get himself embroiled in any fisticuffs here. He gets up the inside down the hill though, and a lovely move into turn 5, levers John Jones aside, and he does now move into 6th place. A second and a half is what separates him from Nicky Taylor, who has caught Reese Bell. This though, the fight for the race lead. 3 cars together, Ethan Hill not going as quickly as Oliver Gibson, who is also not going as quickly as Elliot Daltonaire's. 8.5 minutes left on the clock, and this is getting tastier by the lap.
Yeah, it is. They've got a 3-second gap back to the likes of Reese Bell, so they can just focus on what's going on around them. And Oliver Gibson is easily in the hardest position right now. In the 3-way battle, it's always most difficult to be in the middle, because if you make the move and it doesn't work, then you're susceptible to being overtaken by the driver who was 3rd in the little pack, and of course that is Elliot Daltonaire's for the time being. So if he gets into the race lead, Lord knows he's going to be hard to catch as soon as around here at Turkey. Here goes Oliver Gibson, though, as Elliot Daltonaire did miss his braking zone about 2 corners ago. Gibson trying to take advantage of it. Ethan Hill going defensive. He doesn't need to get out the way, and Lord knows he doesn't want to. 8 minutes to go. It's going to be a long time to hold on to that lead of this race, and actually he backs Oliver Gibson all the way back up to Elliot Dalton-Ayres. I think, to be honest, I think the best thing that Ethan Hill can do is probably keep backing Oliver Gibson up and hope that Elliot Dalton-Ayres can give him a little bit of a favour. But I don't think he's going to be given the option, because here comes Oliver Gibson.
Yep, Gibson up the inside into turn one, got the superior traction off the final corner, but look at the way that Ethan Hill is fighting him. He's not going to give this place away, and he does manage to keep Oliver Gibson at bay, so Ethan Hill hanging on to the advantage for now then, and you're right, his best friend right now is Elliot Dalton-Ayres, until Elliot can get past Oliver Gibson, and then suddenly Elliot Dalton-Ayres becomes Ethan Hill's worst nightmare. Takes a very different line through turn three, lunges on the inside into four, just wasn't quite close enough, but that was enough to distract for a moment at least Oliver Gibson, and just relinquish the pressure slightly from Ethan Hill. This is a real pressure cooker situation, but at the moment, Jack, they're not being caught by the cars behind, so it remains just a three-way fight.
Yeah, Dalton-Ayres again, more than anything, I think he's just trying to psych out Oliver Gibson, and I think he's managing it, isn't he? Gibson just missing apexes left, right and centre, really all of a sudden driving in his moves, just sliding around the triple left-hander there all of a sudden, and Dalton-Ayres is really doing Ethan Hill a massive favour. There is probably half a lap here that Ethan Hill can calm himself down before he has to start cycling himself up again for the next 6.5 minutes, and up the inside there goes Elliot Dalton-Ayres, and even with the rear engine Porsche, the traction not quite there to get him off and potentially making another kind of move. But what we've seen so far from Gibson in the first race particularly, and this race, is he's not going to be giving up, and he's going to be trying to go forwards. John Jones has a little bit of a spin. Sam Zero goes past him. I imagine Joel Lask and Scott Bugner probably will as well. Those two drivers really haven't pushed on at all in this race. Joel Lask just inside the top 10, but probably doesn't have much hope of moving any further forward, to be honest, for the rest of this race. So we're going to focus on what Elliot Dalton-Ayres and Oliver Gibson can do about Ethan Hill.
Yes, we are back across the line they go then. So Dalton-Ayres into second, and now looking to try and get his way into the race lead. What could be a double race victory then on the cards here for Elliot Dalton-Ayres. Once already this season, of course, back at the opening round at Bahrain, and he's got a good run coming up turn two. Just the different lines being taken ultimately, though, as he makes his way into the braking zone at turn three. 5 minutes 20 left on the clock. Again, lunges up the inside, needs to be careful and needs to make sure that he does this cleanly, Jack. He's got the pace and he's got the time at the moment. Still a quarter of the race to go. There is no point going for a hot-headed move here. Just needs to bide his time.
I was going to say third place. It's better than a DNF, isn't it, really? Even if he loses out to Oliver Gibson. But up the inside there, is late on the brakes, and if he didn't get that absolutely perfect on the brakes, he was going to go and T-bone into the side of Ethan Hill. But he has got it to perfection. That Ford GT is absolutely hustling around here at the Istanbul Park. And Ethan Hill is in a bit of trouble now from Oliver Gibson. But Elliot Dalton-Ayres won't care. In fact, he'll love the idea of Ethan Hill being in between himself and the other Porsche, the Smart 5 Porsche, because he's absolutely flying. He knows he's got the pace. He's now got the track position. He probably feels that he's got driver of the round potentially in his hands as well. It's brilliant from Elliot Dalton-Ayres.
Yeah, this has been a spectacular performance, and he's had to work for this as well. Race one, okay, led every lap, but he still had the pressure, didn't he, coming behind from the LB Motorsport BMW. In this race, though, he has not been handed anything on a plate, because he, okay, gained some ground on the opening lap, as we've got some interesting stuff going on in the background. In fact, some interesting stuff going on for second now. Oliver Gibson on the inside of Ethan Hill, and Josh Martin sailing off into the hairpin at the end of the back straight, trying to clear Nicky Taylor. They touch through the penultimate corner, they touch again. Josh straightens out the Porsche. Now, will he choose to give that place back? At the moment, it seems not. No, he does now pull over and allows Nicky Taylor to get driving there from our rating champ.
Yeah, no, it's the smart decision, isn't it? Because there's no point letting it go to a stewards, even if you're 50-50, whether you think it's a good move or not, or whether you think it was a legal move or not, put it that way. You might as well give the place back, and then it's fully within his right to keep going at him for the next 3.5 minutes. So, yeah, well done, Josh Martin. Hopefully Nicky Taylor won't mind that one too much. He shouldn't mind too much because he's got the place back. He just needs to make sure his car's not damaged. And, of course, they've dropped a little bit of time to respell, but that won't be... Respell won't be minding that whatsoever, will it?
Respell will be very happy with this fourth place, but can he hold on to Nicky Taylor and Josh Martin? perhaps delaying each other slightly at the moment, but I sense that they are going to get their act together here before too much longer. Josh Martin will be a bit frustrated that he had to give that place back, but did do the right thing, I think, in giving the place back and making absolutely sure there that he did not incur a penalty. That's the last thing that he needed. Keeping a clean slate when you're fighting for a championship is essential. Out towards the chicane they come once again at 9 and 10. Peaks to the inside does Josh Martin. Not quite close enough for the time being.
Yeah, he's just sort of, I would say, biding his time a little bit more, maybe. Maybe it was a little bit rash before, trying to learn his lesson just a touch. But he's doing well. It's a very entertaining battle, that's for sure. But we would be very used to seeing these, or we wouldn't be surprised if these two drivers were actually fighting this hard for a race victory. Is where they should be. It's probably where they think they deserve to be as well. But around the outside, Josh Martin goes, and he's missed the apex completely. But is he going to have the inside for the penultimate corner? This is where they made contact a lap ago. And Nicky Taylor this time gives him a little bit more room, knows exactly what Josh Martin is going to do. And here comes Josh Martin with that cutback though, and he's got a really good drive out of the final corner.
Terrific scrap this, isn't it? And Josh Martin diving back up the inside into the first corner. Late on the brakes, we know that he is good on the brakes. That Corvette, when it's not snapping sideways, seems to be performing reasonably well under braking too. And he does now get himself ahead of Nicky Taylor, but they're now 2.5 seconds behind Reese Bell. They lost about a second just on that lap alone. So Reese is at 4th place, looking more and more stable now, as we are potentially on the final lap. Took us to whether we get one more in at the end of this, but certainly for now, Josh Martin really just focusing on consolidating this newly acquired 5th place.
Yeah, well, if Dalton Ayres keeps improving his lap times like he has been the previous couple of times, we could get another 2 laps in the way he's been driving. He's absolutely flying, isn't he? But I think that we are on the final lap here. We've got a minute to go, and we've got about just over half the lap, although it is the faster half of the lap, so you never know. Either way, Josh Martin is probably quite happy here, and it is worth noting, we've pretty much decided what our driver the round is, but we're going to give it an honourable mention because he won't get an interview. Well, he might get an interview, but it's unlikely at the moment. With Reese Bell, he's been absolutely brilliant, and I'm sure everyone will agree he's fully deserving of it. There's just one driver who seems to have surprised us this week and stands out above the rest, I think. And, we can probably all know who that's going to be. He will get an interview at the end of this race as long as he doesn't chuck it off himself. Oliver Gibson got through, by the way, on Ethan Hill. He's up to 2nd place. So, yeah, it's the two Porsche just swapping position. But again, actually, Andy, to be fair to Ethan Hill, 3rd place, pretty damn good considering his first race and the fact that he's not been quite on it in that Porsche.
No, that's for sure, actually. And that's always telling, isn't it? You can tell a lot about a driver on a night where things aren't perhaps going to plan, and those who are still capable of performing well, getting a good result out of it on those occasions should really be commended. So yeah, we expect this of some of our established front runners, people like Eric Axel, Cern, Scott Bugner, Joel Lask, having a bad day, but at least they're still going. They've not given up completely, and they are continuing to circulate, continuing to try and bank some points, because you will score points just for finishing the race, and these drivers know that's how championships are ultimately won or lost, and it could be just the point or two that they get from this race that saves them ultimately in the championship, as Eric Axelson is waved through by Scott Bugner. That must have been weird.
I couldn't tell you anything about what just happened, apart from the fact that Scott Bugner just seemed to slam the brakes on. I don't know whether he thought the race was over, because that's the amount of laps that we did last time, maybe. I've absolutely no idea, but hopefully he isn't running out. He just seems to be snapping all over the place. I was about to say hopefully he's not running out of fuel or something, but I think he's just jumped out the way of his teammates as well. I'm not entirely sure. Strange one.
Very strange. Moving on, because I don't know what else to say about that. That was an odd one. There is a potential, as Lewis Edwards has just suggested to us, that that was with team tactics to get Scott Bugner one place further up, but it's very early in the championship to be doing that, and Joel Lask will, I'm sure, feel that he could still win this championship as well with some more results like he had at Monza. So very strange situation indeed, but anyway, it's even stranger because it benefited Eric as well. That's the thing.
Yes.
If the two Beamers were running nose to tail, you'd understand. When he had to give a place away to Eric, in order to help his teammate. That didn't make much sense. Anyway, what does make sense is that Elliot Dalton-Ayres has had the perfect night. Pole position, winning race 1, and then a reverse grid race win to boot as well. Near enough maximum points scored by Elliot Dalton-Ayres. He will be very, very happy with that.
Yeah, I think it is maximum points actually, because I think he got the fastest lap in race 1 and he smashed the fastest lap in race 2 by about 4/10 of a second. So, yeah, really good evening by Elliot Dalton-Ayres. Here comes Eric Axelson, who's just got past John Jones to pick up another couple of points potentially into the penultimate corner. That is one battered and bruised looking Corvette, isn't it? It's very unusual to see Eric Axelson's car looking that beaten up, but unfortunately it does tonight. I'm sure we'll see the better of him, the better version of Eric Axelson next time round, and the better version of Scott Bugner and Joel Last. We haven't spoken about them much in the second half of the race. That's because there wasn't much to speak about, or nothing positive anyway. Those two drivers probably going to be very disappointed with their evening. Anyway, we're going to press on and celebrate the drivers on the podium, but we'll do that after this very short break.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Cammus Simulation GTV3 Championship, where we've just seen an absolute clinic put on by one driver who was hunting coming into the night for his first race victory of the season, ends up coming away with 2, and we believe the maximum points haul here from Istanbul Park. A huge congratulations to Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who joins us for the second time in the commentary box now. Elliot, it does not get a lot better than that. Are you surprised at all that you were able to get that result in race 2? I know you were confident about race 1, but doing it from the back of the grid is a whole different challenge.
Yeah, I knew from race 1 and quali that I was quick and that I wanted a good result, at least top 5. But then at turn 2, I think, there was quite a bit of carnage and a lot of the championship contenders were taken out. So I was like, right, I have to do well in this one to just get some more gaps on different races. So kind of what I did, and then I saw that Oliver and Ethan were battling up front, and I caught up to them and managed to get through and take the win. So I'm really pleased about that.
Well, I've got some very disappointing news for you. It's not quite a maximum points haul, I'm now reliably informed. You missed out on one fastest lap, so completely write off everything nice we've been saying about Elliot. It was a bang average night in the end. No, seriously, Elliot, that's really gone well for you, and championship-wise, puts you right back in the conversation, which really was exactly what your aim was for tonight.
I think that I'm at the top of the standings now, so
Wow.
I'm really happy about that.
I bet you are, and it has been a really pretty much the perfect night for you. We have reconsidered after learning that you didn't quite get the maximum points. We're still going to award you with driver of the round, because that was
Well, I'm not
by
sure.
far- Oh,
I'm kidding,
right, okay.
I'm kidding,
You might
I'm
have to
kidding.
argue the toss with Jack Oliphant then. My vote goes to Elliot Dalton Ayres regardless. I think we can forgive him that 1 point. And Elliot, a nice little bit of silverware coming your way after what has been a fantastic night.
Thanks, Andy.
So Elliot Dalton Ayres then will be pleased with that, I suspect. But we will not have a dissatisfied driver chatting to Jack Oliphant now, our runner-up finisher from race 2.
Yes, Ethan Hill. No, sorry, Oliver Gibson, isn't it? My apologies, Oliver Gibson, who came second place. One of the drivers who was up for driver of the round as well. Actually, you put on one hell of a show for us for race 1 and 2. You were fully on the aggressive, weren't you? There was it just sort of gloves off moment for you tonight? Were you just thinking I've just got to go forward?
To be honest, I have no idea. I just found myself in the right position, and I thought, why not? There's a good chance for points, so I just kind of drove as quickly as I could.
That's what you see. That's what I've been doing wrong for years. I haven't been driving as quickly as I could. No, it was awesome to watch, to be honest. Especially in that race 1, it has to be said, Oliver. I mean, race 2 was fairly brilliant from yourself as well. But for a lot of the time, we had the cameras on you for race 1 because your fight with Eric Axelson, Nicky Taylor, that sort of fight for 5th place, that was really exciting. Was that some of the racing, some of the best racing that you've been involved with in VRRC? Do you reckon?
To be honest, it's probably the best racing I've been involved in, like full stop.
Oh, get that on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
That'll be on a tagline of VRRC, that one.
Taking that. I'm recording that. I'm taking that.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting, to be honest, and huge respect to those guys as well, because like I don't think I've had that close racing without there being contact. So there's another one for a t-shirt, but yeah, no,
Taking it.
very
Yeah.
good racing.
I was going to say it was awesome to watch, Oliver, and I have to say in terms of the driver of the round, you were 3rd place in driver of the round. So well done on getting 2nd place in race number 2 anyway. But a big congratulations, and I'm sure we'll be speaking to you next time.
Thank you very much. Thanks for commentating.
Excellent job there from Oliver. Ethan Hill was the man with whom he did battle for much of that race. Ethan having to settle for 3rd in the end, but satisfied to at least be sort of part of the battle there for the race win. It was certainly good fun to watch. Were you enjoying yourself too?
I was, yeah. It was nice to be at the front for once and not be a little bit further down where I had been for the first couple rounds of this championship. But yeah, really happy with the P3. Elliot's car was very quick in a straight line, and the Porsche isn't so quick compared to the others. But I'm just really happy for a P3 and a podium, and hope we can continue on to next week.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been nice to see you starting to get more and more of these front-running results now, and I'm sure you were looking forward to more of the same. Kyalami in a week's time, though. That's a tricky track, isn't it? How are you looking forward to that one?
I love Kyalami. It's one of my favourite tracks to hot lap. And I feel it may be quite similar to this because it's a little bit of elevation change at Kyalami as well. So it's going to be interesting to see who's on top next week. So it's going to be interesting, I think.
Certainly is. We are looking forward to watching along as well. But for now, Ethan, congratulations on that podium. Hopefully this won't be the last time we chat to you this season.
Cheers, Andy.
So our podium finishers then, Jack, after another entertaining race here in the Cammus Simulation GTV3 Championship. And they, like us, are looking forward to Kyalami in a week's time.
Yeah, there's plenty of action in the championship left to go, and we can bring you at the championship order now as well, because I think it has updated. There we go, it has indeed. So Elliot Dalton Ayres sits on the top of the championship. Eric Axelson still sits in 2nd place. This will be his dropped round, but I'm sure he'll want to be sort of improving slightly as he gets a little bit further through the rest of the season. Joel Lask, well, it wasn't an evening for him to remember, or Scott Bugner, actually. Joel is in 3rd place, Scott is in 5th. They're split by Josh Martin, who did have a consistent round, even if it wasn't necessarily the best he's ever had. He did get 3rd place in race number 1, though. Oliver Gibson has pushed forward. He's up into 6th position, not too far away from the drivers ahead of him as well. He's on 72 points. Josh and Scott are on 79 points. Nicky Taylor, well, yeah, he's not where he wants to be, but again, ever the consistent driver. He's in 7th place. So Reese Bell pushing on into the top 10. He's in 8th, and Ethan Hill in 9th, and Andy Carroll rounding out the top 10. Right, since we've done the race 2 interviews, we've done the championship, it's about that time that we decide, well, we bring you what's coming up next. So what else have we got at the VRRC in general? So I'm going to take my lead off Lewis Edwards. Whatever he puts up on screen we shall talk about. And it is the time attack we're going to go through first. The running order said NASCAR, but whatever. We'll go with the time attack, Lewis. Fiat Bath has already come and gone at Vallelunga. So is the Audi TT at the Oschersleben. We are now at the in the mini JCW. Apologies, at Alton Park Island circuit. The circuit that normally hosts the mini JCWs in real life, so you can try and replicate what you've seen in the real world out there on the sim on the time attack here at VRRC. Before we head on over in about 5 days' time to the Cupra TCRs. And very quickly, we're going to get through this because the Virtual Truck Racing Championship is our next special event that we've got coming up. Three-way special event, just like we did in the NASCAR a couple of weeks ago. And that'll be at the end of the GTV3. And I don't think we can talk about it, but we've already planned the next major championship as well. And it's looking very exciting indeed. But before we get to that, we will have the virtual truck racing. And lastly, we have more NASCAR, and I believe Andy's very excited about this one. I think a number of people are actually extremely excited about this one. The three special events that we did before the GTV3 Championship certainly did wet the whistle of the VRRC community. So all of a sudden, on Thursdays now, we'll be hosting the NASCAR Championship. It's not going to be broadcast, but this is a bit of an experiment to see if we can get the interest and keep it going for a major championship. So maybe it can become one of our mainstay championships on a Wednesday night with full broadcasting, just like you've enjoyed here this evening. We're off to Daytona, Atlanta, Auto Club, Homestead, Richmond, Watkins Glen, Pocono, and Kansas. A calendar that's been made with love and attention by not only Rich at VRRC and Lewis Edwards, who normally weigh in on these sort of things, but mainly by Andy McEwen as well. He's his little baby, and he's very much looking forward to seeing how it comes up. Right, I believe that is about all we've got. In fact, no, I'm going to hand over very quickly to Rich Hayden to talk a little bit about, well, Rich, if you're okay with having a chat with us on stream about what you've got to offer at the Sim Racing Centre.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't realise you were coming to me there. To me then, Jack.
It's all right. I thought I'd just throw you in at the deep end.
No, that's absolutely fine, mate. Yeah, we're all up and running. Everything's looking great. Everything's running very well. We've got 5 simulators here, 4 of our SimRace Pro static simulators, all direct drive, hydraulic pedals, 49-inch curved displays, all linked together. We also have a full motion simulator as well, which is also direct drive, Mecha Cup hydraulic pedals, high-end PCs running everything, and these are all linked together so we can have up to 5 people racing side by side. We've also got a VR PC here as well. One of the sims is set up with virtual reality headset. Probably going to put another one on another sim as well. But we also have a VR gaming station as well for doing things like Beat Saber, etc., etc. And then we've got a nice little seated area with a big 70-inch TV where we get to watch racing on it as well and do some sim racing at the same time. So it's a really good place to be. It's great for doing some driver coaching, some personal practice for race drivers or sim drivers or sim teams as well if they want to come and use it together. But also it's quite a good chill out area as well where you can watch a bit of telly and play a few games as well.
I was going to say, you basically built everybody's dream man cave, haven't you, for yourself?
Yes.
And you thought you'd try and help out some drivers out there with driver coaching as well, on just to try and make sure that you can charge it to the business, basically.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, if you're interested in race and sim driver coaching, whether it's in the sim, whether it's actually online, or whether you want to come in person to the VRRC driver hub, then by all means you can head on over to the links down below and to the VRRC website where you can get in touch with Rich and potentially get involved as well with any of the championships that we've been running. Right, I think that's all she wrote for the time being. I believe we've got one thing left to do, and that's to say thank you very much to everybody who's tuned in. Apologies about some of the technical issues that Andy had during the early evening, but we do appreciate you guys sticking around. Well done to all the drivers, and a big thank you to everybody behind the scenes at VRRC as well. My name's been Jack Oliphant. We've had Andy McEwen alongside us, who's had to jet off to actually race in a NASCAR. Would you believe it's slightly earlier than planned? But a big thank you to him for guiding me through the evening. As always, we'll see you next week for Kyle Army.